Welcome to Stay for Dinner, a podcast of cooking, curiosity, and conversation. If you love cooking, if you hate cooking, if you don't know how you feel about cooking because you've never tried it before, congratulations, you are in the right place. And the place right now is part 2 of a very special Stay for Dinner event. On last week's episode, myself and Haley Hepworth, comedian and person I am married to, drafted a team of 6 ingredients, 6 food items that we have in our actual apartment that we now have to make an actual meal with. We had a blast doing this draft. If you haven't heard it yet, please go back and check it out. But this week is the first installment of the ingredient draft cook-off. I will be taking the field with my team, and then Haley and I, who are also the judges, because it is quarantine, will eat it and then start the judgment process. But for right now, let's join me and my ingredients in the kitchen. Enjoy. All right, this is it. This is night 1 of a 2-night cooking event. I am cooking first in the ingredient draft competition. I have selected the following ingredients. I have ginger, I have orange, I have broccolini, I have 4 scallions, I have jasmine rice, and I have some flank steak, some previously frozen flank steak that is now almost entirely defrosted. And how's this for gamesmanship? I've been sort of prepping to cook all day, thinking about what I might want to make with my various ingredients. Going into this going like, oh, I think with all the stuff I have, I can make some sort of like orange peel beef. And so reading various recipes for orange beef of various kinds, looking at commonalities and really trying to, not get too locked into any one thing, but kind of thinking this is what I have. And if I feel like my opponent's strength is going to be technical innovation and creativity, then maybe mine just needs to be like technical prowess and execution and just executing something very clean and well. So just trying to figure out how to do that. And then finally getting it together to cook. As always, it's a little later than I wanted it to be. And my competitor is making bread in our kitchen. It recently concluded, but it was very hot here in LA today, and it's 8 o'clock at night, and it's still very hot. And the kitchen is frankly sweltering, and I'm about to make it more sweltering because I'm planning on doing an approach to this recipe that's going to call for like at least 4 different burners. So I'm wearing shorts. That's what we've come to. Not a shorts guy usually, but global warming and the gamesmanship of my rival have pushed us to this point. We're going to do this. The approach that I'm taking is sort of loosely adapted from a couple of different recipes. One on a blog that I really like called Walks of Life, that's like Chinese American. I believe the people who write the blog have like a Chinese American restaurant heritage, lineage that they are working from and spending their lives or their childhoods in and around that world. And then Mark Bittman, who often writes for the New York Times, I found an orange beef recipe that I'm copping a lot of stuff from. And then also the New York Times, Sam Sifton has a recipe that he says is based on a Dale Talde from Top Chef approach from a cookbook of his, but it seems kind of close to the Mark Bittman one in a way that makes me be like, I don't know, is there some shattered glass stuff going on amongst the current and former staff of NYT Cooking? I don't know, but I am saying that there is. No, the 2 recipes are different enough. I just thought it was interesting. But it was also interesting to see sort of the commonalities and also seeing a lot of the comments being like, holy shit, this is a lot of stuff to do. So I took all of those, I thought about them, and I wrote out my own approach, and hopefully it's enough to get me over the top here in this inaugural ingredient draft. I think my team is going to take me where I need to go, but I have to get them over the finish line. Only I can do that. Quick check of my ingredients. I'm going to be making a sauce with some red pepper flakes, some ginger, some orange zest for my orange. Maybe also do a few strips of that orange to throw in at the end. I'm not sure. We'll see how much zest my orange yields. And then be using some scallion whites in that. I'm going to use about 1/8 of a cup of soy sauce. There's a lot of 1/8 of a cup in this recipe. You'll see. A tablespoon of fish sauce, 1.5 tablespoons of Shaoxing cooking wine, 1/8 of a cup of sherry, not sherry vinegar. Our sherry vinegar ran out recently, actually. It's very sad. Just regular old this is actually dry sherry. I don't think it's literally cooking sherry, but we pretty much only use it to cook with. We very rarely put on dressing gowns and just have like a snifter of sherry. Do you do sherry and snifters? I'm not sure. You do brandy and snifters for sure. White wine vinegar, mostly because this recipe calls for rice vinegar, but I'm pretty sure we're out of rice vinegar. Orange juice, I'm gonna juice this orange that I'm using, and then brown sugar. I've got my broccolini, I'm gonna be blanching that, which is a step that I am cribbing from Walks of Life. Blanching just means like shocking in boiling water really fast. More scallions, scallions upon scallions. They're showing up all over the place in this recipe. Some dried chilies, some little dried red chilies. Jasmine rice, of course, one of my star ingredients that I selected for my squad. And then I'm going to be marinating my flank steak in some dry sherry again. That's cropping up again. Some white pepper, some cornstarch. That kind of brings it all together and gives it... there's a real sort of Chinese takeout thing when you cook meat in cornstarch that is great. Salt, a little bit of 5-spice, and some canola oil then finally is going to be in our wok. But the thing that I realized when I was writing this recipe out and figuring out my approach, I got so far down the line being like, oh yeah, and then I'll mince up the garlic, and then I'll throw in the garlic, and then garlic. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I don't have garlic. That's part of this whole draft thing. Haley got garlic, and garlic is my favorite. This gives me more pause than anything, more pause than the fact that I got kind of all the ingredients that I wanted to get, that I was going in hoping I would get. Was the sacrifice that I was making there was I was going like, well, probably won't get garlic, so I'll have ginger and scallions be my sort of best 2 out of 3. You know, ginger, garlic, and scallions go into a lot of Chinese cooking, and I don't have garlic, and I love garlic. I love it in everything. It's in everything that I make, and I don't have it. And I was writing this out, and it was like I was about halfway through, and I was like, oh right, I don't get it. So I'm worried, and in one case early on in the recipe where I would be using garlic, I'm not going to use like garlic powder or minced garlic flakes or whatever. I don't even know if that would be allowed, but I'm not even going to go there because fresh garlic is really just like, feels like there's kind of no substitute. You're better off just, I saw a like some sort of Instagram thing recently with Allison Roman, also from the New York Times. Maybe she can weigh in on the Mark Bickman, Sam Sifton shattered glass orange beef recipe situation. She was talking about, you know, people not having stuff during the quarantine, and we've not had garlic for various periods, and it seems like it's really weirdly hard to get compared to other sorts of ingredients. She was like, it's not really, using dried is not gonna really get you where you need to go. Figure out how to get flavor in there other ways. So that's what I'm going to try to do. And I think that's it. Let's get going. First off, I'm going to slice my beef. It's pretty well defrosted here. And I'm going to do it like against the grain so the fat is running one way, and I'm going to cut the other way. I always have a bunch of different minds about how to approach cutting the beef, how big to make it, because it's not, that was like one of the things that they were saying in the New York Times recipes. They were like, oh yeah, the big innovation of this recipe is use really nice steak instead of like flank steak or whatever, where it's like, okay, great, easy for you to say. And so ultimately what I decided is I'm going to try and cut it into like 2-inch by 1/2 inch strips against the grain. And I have, my literal rule of thumb is that one knuckle of my thumb is about 1 inch, so my entire thumb is about 2 inches, roughly. So that's how we're gonna approach this. Now I'm feeling like they're kind of small. Maybe make them a little, split the difference. 1/3 of an inch-ish. All right, my beef is finished slicing. I'm gonna put it in the fridge for now, because I don't know how long it's gonna take to make my marinade. Probably not too long, but just to be safe. All right, now in a small bowl, I'm gonna mix up 1.5 tablespoons of the sherry, a couple sprinkles of white pepper, 1.5 tablespoons of cornstarch, and a pinch of salt, and more than a pinch probably, a healthy pinch, and then a true pinch of 5-spice. And then pour that in the bowl that I have my beef in, and kind of mix that around, make sure that it thoroughly coats the beef. And again, not sure how long the rest of my steps will take, so I'm going to put the beef back in the fridge for the moment. Hang out, soak up all that, and I'm going to rinse off my cutting board because it's all beefy, and some of the things I'm going to be cutting on it are going to be raw in the dish at the end. So, not trying to give anybody food poisoning here on the ingredient draft. That would not be sportsmanlike. All right, next up, I am going to zest my orange, get as much zest on there as possible. We have a zester, but you could also, or a microplane rather, is its official name. But you could also use like a box grater. And we want to be careful not to grate too deeply or you start getting the like white pith, like the gross part between the peel and the fruit in there. And I gotta say, this orange is not going to, it's definitely a fine orange, but it's not gonna like make any 19th century folks move to California with promises of citrus and health. It's also not yielding me a ton of zest, so I'm not really going to get any strips off of this. That's okay. The orange flavor will be present. Gathering up my zest, put that in a little bowl. Little bowl's the key to victory. Okay, going to juice my orange. That's going to go into a separate bowl. Really trying to get as much juice out as possible. Get everything out of one of my drafted ingredients that I can. Obviously leaning heavily on pantry ingredients as well, but still, I gave up one of my slots for you, orange. You gotta make it pay. Okay, and then into that bowl that I just juiced the orange into, I'm also going to mix in the rest of my sauce ingredients. That's 1/8 of a cup of soy sauce, tablespoon of fish sauce, tablespoon and a half of Shaoxing cooking wine. This might represent the last of our Shaoxing cooking wine, unfortunately, which is too bad. 1/8 of a cup of dry sherry. What if I discover that 1/8 of a cup is just a tablespoon and a half, and this entire recipe is just a series of 1/8 of a cups? I don't think it is, and there's no way to find out. 1/8 of a cup of, would be great if it was rice vinegar. It's not, it's white wine vinegar. And then finally 1/8 of a cup of brown sugar. A lot of little fiddly prep work, but I think once we are finally getting going, we'll be really getting going. I'm gonna put my wet sauce ingredients next to the stove. Then I'm gonna mince my ginger. Have a like 2-inch or more piece here. That should be enough. I'm hoping to get 1/8 of a cup. Oh yeah, this is gonna be 1/8 of a cup. Easy. Put that in with my orange zest, and then I'm gonna also put in my red pepper flake. And that is really standing in for, in a lot of the recipes I was looking at, they were using like fresh chilies or jalapenos or a bunch of stuff like that, which would be great. Don't have it, so we're improvising. And I think I ultimately ended up with maybe about like a teaspoon. Man, if that had been in the draft, that would have gone early, I think. We use a lot of those. And then I'm gonna mince my scallions. I'm gonna separate them into white and green parts, and then I'm gonna divide the white parts in using some at the beginning and some at the end. And when we say white parts, I'm really talking about like the white and light green parts, the parts where it's like solid at the bottom. And I'm gonna mince up the white and light green parts pretty finely, and then I'm gonna slice the green parts, and gonna kind of do that on an angle. Gives them a nice little presentation. Gonna toss them on at the end. All right, so I'm gonna put half of the whites in with the ginger and red pepper flake and orange zest, and then I'm gonna put half in a bowl with my dried chilies, and those are gonna get like fried up at the very end. And I'm gonna put, you guessed it, put the green parts of my scallions in a little bowl now that they're all sliced up, and put it where I plan to plate. I'm gonna chop my broccolini into, yeah, like 1.5 inch pieces. You could really use broccoli. You know what? I think I'm gonna blanch them first and then chop them. Is that crazy? I feel like blanching seems easy with broccoli. It's the worst lyric from Strawberry Fields Forever. But I started chopping up one of the broccolinis and I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to just dunk those in and fish them out in 20 seconds. I'm ending up with a lot of small little piecey pieces. Or do we just do it and be legends? I need some water on to boil. Try to use as little water as possible so it boils fast. I'm changing my mind. DMX said, first we're gonna chop, then we're gonna blanch. Be true Rough Riders about it. Water is coming up to boil here nicely. Gonna hit it with some salt, because why the heck not? Right, throwing the broccolini in. 71,000, 18,000, 91,000, 21,000. All right, about 20 seconds. Call it good. And then we're gonna drain them into a colander. Got nice and bright green. And we're gonna hit them with cold water to stop them from cooking. Set those aside, they'll play in again later. And then I'm gonna start making some rice according to package directions. Oh, one thing I learned about myself during this process, I don't know how to spell the word ingredient. I think it's ingredient. But I'm learning. Okay, and I'm gonna start making my sauce, adding a tablespoon of canola oil to a small saucepan. Hence the name. Saucepans are the high-sided ones, as far as I know. Got that on a medium heat. Then we're gonna tip in our bowl of minced ginger, red pepper flakes, orange zest, scallion whites, and then we're gonna move those around for a couple minutes, and it's gonna smell really good. In fact, I just put them in, and it already does. And we're just gonna cook them until everything kind of softens up a little bit. I feel like in recipes like this, there's like 2 intervals of cooking. There's either 30 seconds or like 2 to 3 minutes when you're dealing with aromatics and stuff like this. So this is longer than just till fragrant. This is till softened. But we want to keep it moving so it doesn't brown or anything like that. Ooh, it smells good. This is where we're missing our old friend garlic. We'll try not to miss them too much. Not let on to the white parts of the scallions that they are merely a stand-in. Will this prove wise? I don't know, we'll find out. The oil is kind of taking on a really nice orange color. And basically we're just infusing all these flavors into the oil, and then that's gonna suffuse. I don't know the difference between infuse and suffuse. I think I'm using them correctly. Throughout the rest of the stuff that we put into the sauce, and then subsequently, hopefully, the dish. All right. Cooked it for a few minutes. Now I'm tipping in the rest of my sauce ingredients. That's my soy sauce, my fish sauce, Shaojing cooking wine, the sherry, vinegar, sugar, maybe other stuff. Reciting from memory here. So I'm going to turn my heat up, bring it to a boil, and lower it till it bubbles in a charming fashion. And we're going to cook that until it reduces by about half. This is heavily cribbed from the Mark Bittman and Sam Sifton recipes. And going to stir it every so often. My beef is going to be playing pretty soon, so I'm going to take it out of the fridge.
It smells fantastic.
I think so.
In here, yeah. Oh, we got a little sauce.
Little
going.
sauce work.
Ooh, yeah. That looks great. So what all is going on in this sauce?
Thank you. Got some
orange.
Soy sauce, fish sauce, orange juice, orange zest, ginger, red pepper flake, vinegar, Shaojing cooking wine, and sherry.
Oh man, yum!
I think so.
It smells really good.
Thank you.
But we'll see, won't we? We'll see.
The trash talk is coming too fast and furious. I had to open the window to kind of let some of the heat from the bread baking out.
Oh, for heaven's sake. The bread baking, listen, that had been planned all week. It was in no way sabotage effort. I think if you can cook, you should be able to cook in a really hot kitchen.
It's almost like that old saying, if you can't stand the really hot kitchen, get out of the kitchen.
It's just... yeah, catchy, real snappy.
It fits on a t-shirt. It fits on 1.5 t-shirts. I did think it was a little suspicious that after you pulled the bread out of the oven, you just walked it over to a trash can and threw it away.
I mean, were you thinking about it while you were starting your process?
What do you mean, the bread?
Yeah.
The heat?
All of it?
A little bit.
Okay.
But also I started earlier and it was less cool outside.
Yeah.
It's not that cool outside. It's still pretty warm. It's another Tennessee Williams evening here in mid-April.
Feels fitting. It feels like it should be hot and swampy in here when it's, you know, incredibly tense.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Reputations and marriages are on the line.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we got a sauce going here. We have a pot over here with a lid on. I'm guessing rice.
That's rice.
There.
Rice is resting.
I almost, not as an effort towards sabotage, but just compulsively
almost pulled the lid off. Oh no!
I caught myself.
Exactly.
I just want to poke around, see what's going on. And then you have your beef over here.
Marinating.
Interesting. Very exciting. So are you following a recipe, or are you kind of
I am
freestyling?
fusing about 3 different recipes.
Excellent.
And my own ingenuity.
I see a big bowl of these prepped
scallions to top.
Feels like we're
Probably more than I'll ultimately need.
Very well garnished.
Yes, extremely.
Well, based on the smells and sights of what's going on in here, I'm looking forward to eating this dish.
You guys can't see it, but she just drew her thumb across her throat into like, you're dead.
Unbelievable. I don't like this, DC. Here we are in the
Now
kitchen,
she's stirring my sauce, hoping to be hoping to DQ me.
You're telling lies in the kitchen. I need to be able to trust you, DC.
Ooh, I think this is almost done.
You know, kind of operating on a system where we have to be trusted to be truthful.
That's
in
true.
our
That's true.
assessment of
That's
these
true.
meals.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So when you're on the mic, standing right in front of me, you know, fibbing, I don't like it. I have to say, okay. And in here I see some chilies.
Engenders mistrust in the process.
Chilies and
some more white
like
scallion.
The scallion bottoms.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see you at the table.
The head games continue.
Head games. I think nothing if not complimentary, DC, and you know, you're in the last couple minutes of your process. I know these minutes can be clutch, so I'm gonna leave you to make sure that you can fully focus.
Okay, now that she's gone, I'm gonna taste my sauce because I didn't want to grimace in front of her if it was bad. I'm kind of worried, to be honest with you, about the amount of red chili flakes that I used. Didn't look like very much earlier, and then now in a sauce that's kind of like cooked down, it looks like a lot. Ooh, it's gonna be spicy, but it's within bounds. We both like a lot of spice, me and the other judge, so I think that'll be okay. Because also, it's just a sauce, so it's gonna go like everywhere. The sauce is looking a little broken almost. Like the oil is floating at the top a little bit. Give it another quick stir before it goes in later. In the meantime, I'm gonna start the last part of the process in the wok. Gonna heat up the wok with our old friend, 1/8 of a cup of canola oil. And the wok is on high. That really is where it's at its best, I think. Sure, there's exceptions to that rule, but that's been my experience. First, I'm gonna add the beef. And as soon as it goes in, I'm gonna kind of spread it out all over. And then not touch it after I do that. For about a minute. Try to lay out the individual pieces themselves. Okay, it's been about a minute. Gonna flip it around. Try to get as even browning as possible all over the place. They're not laying as uniform and flat as I would like, but the ones that landed right in the dead center of the wok got some really nice browning on them. I'd like to see that kind of all over if possible. All right, it's been about another minute. Stir around, see how we're looking. Give it about another 30 seconds to try to get some color on some of the pieces that don't have any. And then I'm gonna move it to a plate and hit it with a little bit of salt. All right, and then now I just have some oil in the wok and some leftover beef fat. So I'm gonna tip in my remaining scallion whites and chilies. And this is one of those 30-second intervals. And then I'm gonna put my beef back in. And then my sauce, after I give it a quick stir around. turn the heat down and give it a little taste. It's looking good, but the sauce is a little bit thinner than I think I'd ultimately like. It's very orangey. I'm going to add in the broccolini and turn the heat back up and just stir until everything is warmed through. I'm a little bit nervous about some of the larger pieces of broccolini, and I'm nervous about the oiliness of the sauce. I feel like it kind of broke. I'm not sure what to do about it because I also don't want everything to get overcooked. So I'm just trying to stir it around as much as possible. And at the end, anything that's left in the wok, I'm going to kind of, if there's still like good aromatics and stuff, probably like pour it over the top. Put it on top of the rice, trust the rice to soak up a decent amount of any sort of excess sauciness. Plating it up alongside some rice, and we'll be good to go. All right, Haley Hepworth. My rival, my fellow judge. You have in front of you an orange beef over a little jasmine rice. And what do you say we eat it and then we get down to brass tacks?
Sounds good to me.
All right, sweet. Let's eat. All right, as we take our few last little bites and sips here, I guess I took off my chef's hat, or tried to take off my chef's hat. It was tough to separate myself from being the me that judges things that I cook versus the me that judges things in general, and trying to think what would the second judge think, especially not having been in the kitchen or knowing I don't know. It was interesting. What were your reactions?
Well, clearly I hated it. I didn't. For the audience at home, they know that this is just a riff on the classic dad joke. It's actually not even a riff. It's just the dad joke where he has a completely empty plate in front of him and says to the waitress, like, I hated it.
Which is a joke I've just straight up done. Like,
yeah,
I do it. I find myself doing it and then being like, oh, right, that's that dad joke. And being like, it's very funny and I like it.
If there were a dad joke, like, bracket, I feel like that would have to be, if not the winner, a hot contender, right?
Well, it comes up so much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because also dad's just like interacting with the waitstaff, I think.
Big time. Yeah. Also, I feel like it has possibilities for a like tag where they're like, can I get a refund or whatever, you know?
It opens up a whole world of dad riffs. It's like a branching dialogue tree of really hilarious.
That are all so in the wheelhouse of that.
Ways that they can be, and ways that they can be like, they love me here. Anyway, sorry, you were saying.
Anyway, back to the analysis at hand. No, I really enjoyed the meal. I thought it was super flavorful. I really got the orange. I really got the aromatics. The broccoli was really nice and bright and had a great crunch to it. Or broccolini. Did I say broccoli? I meant broccolini.
I don't remember.
But it really gave me the sensation of like a great takeout Chinese, which is truly one of my all-time favorite things to eat. Is this dish, I think, with the dried chilies and the beef and everything, it did give me almost like a cross-section of the two dishes that we often will get takeout from Sun Hai Inn, our local fantastic takeout Chinese place. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. If I had any points against it, I think the only real negative that I have would be maybe a bit of residual like oiliness or greasiness that I think, just kind of is sitting at the bottom of the plate, and in some ways is really flavorful and nice, where it's like, to a degree, I like that when you want that with like the rice to get a degree of sort of coated in the sauce and the oil and just feeling really indulgent in that way. And also I think that is very true to the experience of a great sort of like takeout Chinese situation. But in this case, there was maybe a little much for my taste. But all in all, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I thought it was really satisfying, tasty, flavorful. Despite the oil issue, still felt very bright. I feel like oftentimes oil can really make dishes feel heavy and weighed down and kind of drown out a lot of the higher note flavors. And in this case, I still really got the really great bright gingeriness and the oranginess and the sort of like floral herbaceous stuff going on in there, and the beautiful like scallion tops as the garnish were lovely, and I really enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, says the judge me. And then I take off my British barrister wig. No, I take off my chef's hat and I put on my British barrister wig. Yes, exactly. I found myself, I was vacillating between my person who made the dish and is judging it and the just person who's purely supposed to be judging it on its own merit. And that was really hard to do.
Sure, of course.
Even just as oftentimes I think you find yourself doing that when you make anything in general, where you're going like, oh, if I made this and then I'm eating it, I'm bringing that to the experience of eating it. And I'm going, oh man, that was whatever. And then you try to separate yourself and go, if I was just eating this, would I like it? And oftentimes I think that I like things more wearing that hat than wearing the chef's hat, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you're always going to be your own harshest critic.
I try. Certainly. But I thought that this was, it to me also had that takeout-y feeling. I feel like the predominant flavor for me was there was like that brightness. The orange did come through for me. There was like a sour sweetness that I genuinely liked.
Absolutely.
It felt like it might have been maybe a sourer orange. I was kind of worried throughout that like sweetness would really predominate. So I tried to balance with, now I'm putting my chef's hat slipping back on.
Well, no, but that's part of the discussion. I
Totally.
mean, is there, other than just the orange juice, are there any other components in there that you were worried were sweet skewing?
Yeah, there's brown sugar in the sauce.
Oh,
and so I figured like with orange juice, orange zest, brown sugar, will it go sweet?
Sure.
And then like cooking wine, even though it's like, it's predominantly acidic, when everything cooks off, alcohol is still booze,
right,
it's still sugar. Yeah. So I was a little bit nervous about that. And then I was also nervous about just straight up the lack of garlic.
Oh, interesting.
Because I found myself as I was pulling together all the different stuff, I was like really far down the road and was just writing in like garlic. The garlic goes here, mince the garlic. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't have it. That's part of the challenge.
Oh.
And so I had to track back and be like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I just going to like pull it out of here? Do I try to make up for it? And what I ended up doing is putting some scallions in the sauce as well as finishing with the white parts of the scallions.
Sure.
Just to try to bring any amount of like, because when I was thinking about garlic, I was just like, that flavor is so hard to replicate.
Yeah.
But I do want there to be any amount of depth there beyond just like, because ginger also can go sweet, obviously.
Yeah, that's true.
Obviously, it doesn't have really a sweetness of its own, but it can skew sweet.
Right.
I feel like.
Yeah, if it's with other sweet stuff, we're primed to
associate it with with a sweetness. And so ultimately, I ended up feeling like there did end up being a depth of flavor and a roundness to it, and I did think the aromatics came through. I did also do that sort of like takeout test in my head and be like, if I got this as takeout, would I be like, what the fuck? Or would I be like, okay, I'm enjoying this when we're watching TV? Which I think is like the bar, right?
Yeah.
Because you can have good Chinese takeout and great Chinese takeout, but the bar I feel like is just you're not like, what went wrong here? You're just like, this is tickling that spot for me. And I felt like it was doing that.
Absolutely.
So
honestly, I feel like whenever I've had the experience of ordering takeout and not feeling like it cleared the bar, the issues for me have either been like, the meat is dry.
Sure.
Which I think we've experienced in both like, Chinese and Indian takeout of like, oh man, there's like this great dish and then there's this protein in it that's just absolutely flavorless and dry.
Yeah, I feel like we got Indian food takeout once and it was like, oh, the sauce is good, but then there's just these like triangles of dry chicken in it that was so weird.
Yeah, where it's like they have no flavor, they have no moisture.
Like it hasn't been cooked in the sauce at all.
Yeah. Which this was fantastic. The meat I felt like was great and tender and flavorful and delicious and worked really well with the sauce. And then the other thing I think of is like, oh yeah, it just doesn't have that seasoning. It doesn't have the depth of flavor. It doesn't have the, the depth, which I felt like this absolutely did. And frankly, I didn't notice or miss the garlic.
If I didn't know there wasn't garlic in there, I'll say this, I don't think I would have been like, what is wrong? What is happening? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I didn't feel that way at all.
So that I feel like is good. And I feel like ultimately, I don't think the cook on the meat was perfect, but I didn't feel like it dried out, which I was concerned about, especially with that kind of like flank steak or hanger steak, you know, whatever that style of steak. I feel like it's very easy for it. There is fat in it, but it's also very easy for it to dry out if it's like sliced too thin or if it's whatever. So I was having a lot of internal debates about how thin to slice it or how thick to slice it. I think ultimately it held up. If anything, I kind of wish there was a little more browning on it. I thought I got a decent amount of browning, but then I was like, I feel like sometimes when you're having like beef or something in like a stir-fried Chinese dish, it can get a really nice, it's not dried, but there is a kind of like,
sure, I know
a
what
little
you're
bit of a
about.
bite to it. I can't exactly describe it.
There's a little bit of a like bitter caramelized edge.
Exactly. And I thought, based on looking at the meat as I was cooking it, I thought that would be there more, but I felt like maybe I didn't achieve enough of it by the time all the other steps happened, and then it never happened. Like I didn't achieve enough browning in that stage, I feel like. And then I think the biggest, you know, when you get a note, like there's a note that you get and you're like, what's this person talking about? Yeah. It sounds like maybe they're saying like, this is something that's bad or wrong with the thing that I made, but I have no idea what they're talking about.
We're just
so I'm a
aiming
little
for
bit
different things, or they have a different taste than me fundamentally.
You have to remind yourself like, oh yeah, okay, whatever, fine. But the note about the oiliness is the kind of note that really hurts because it's one that you gave yourself first. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
I was very
You were
worried
aware
about
of that?
Gotcha. I feel like maybe I just like did the math wrong or something, because basically it's like there's oil in to start the sauce. Then there's oil to like cook the beef in, and then there's oil, and you're not adding additional oil at that point, but like you are adding more, you're like stir frying the aromatics. No, not the aromatics. You're stir frying the chilies and scallions and stuff. So some aromatic elements at the very end in the oil left over from when you fried the beef. And then you're putting everything back in. And I think there was just too much residual oil at that point. Like if I had it to do over again, I would have poured off half or more of it after the beef was done. Because I feel like the beef, it was like probably also fat was then in there. And it was just like a lot of oil ultimately. So,
which again, there are many worse problems to have.
And I do think of oily things, I agree with you. Like for the most part, it was what I was really worried about.
The genre. There are other things that I could have that I would be like, ooh, this oiliness is really dampening this experience for me because it's maybe making something soggy or weighing something down in a way that I know is supposed to be light and, you know, whereas I didn't feel like this affected the texture in a negative way. I didn't feel like you know what I mean?
I do. I think if anything, like what I'm bummed about is that I think that the oiliness of it separated some of the aromatics, and so the sauce didn't really cohere. Like there wasn't, maybe I over reduced the sauce and that's why it broke, and so maybe there was more, the oil that was in the sauce was separated out rather than being integrated, so that added to the overall oiliness tonnage ultimately.
Gotcha.
Rather than kind of letting that be a part of the sauce that's like carrying the flavor.
Sure.
And so I think what you ended up with was just like oil on oil, and I don't necessarily mind oiliness in and of itself. What I don't like is when I feel like it's separating out some part of the flavor of a sauce or something.
I get that.
Do you know what I mean? Where it's just oh, there's liquidiness here. There's like viscosity without flavor. I think is what I don't like.
Right, because then it feels like that's taking away from the flavor or the impact of the flavor.
Exactly. So I found myself at the very end when I was trying to transport it, when I was worried about the oiliness, I was trying to get it from the dish from the wok into the plates, and I found myself trying to like scrape out. I could see that like some sauce and some oil is almost like separated, and some of the like ginger and red pepper flakes and stuff have settled into the bottom of the wok, surrounded by oil, and now I find myself trying to scrape those out and leave as much oil as possible.
Interesting.
So I tried, and I do think that the rice did a good job of soaking that up. I was happy with how the rice turned out. I think
Yeah, great cook on the rice.
So ultimately that to me, I think was the biggest flaw. Secondary to that would maybe be like the cook on the beef, I think was good, could have been better. I think the beef ended up still carrying a lot of like, It wasn't overcooked, all those things, but it also wasn't too chewy. It wasn't like a lot of things that can go wrong with flank steak, but it could have been more caramelized, and I think that would have been a nice dimension to it.
Interesting.
Is a thing that I miss. So those would be my sort of like primary and secondary quibbles. But overall, I thought like ultimately good flavor. I felt like the orange really came through. I feel like I represented my team of ingredients well.
Yeah, you really did. You really highlighted the ingredients that you had. I mean, so what did you add? You had the orange, you had the broccolini, you had the flank steak, you had the ginger and the scallions,
jasmine
I got
rice.
all of those, and the jasmine rice. I feel like all of those ingredients were treated well and showcased beautifully in the dish.
And I guess the other thing that I was worried about that I don't think ended up being as big of a problem was the broccolini. I was worried. I was like, I don't want to over blanch it because it's smaller than broccoli. So it's going to cook faster. I don't want it to be too like mushy when it ends up in the dish.
Not at all.
I think there was still a lot of bite to it. If anything, there was maybe like a little more bite than I would have liked in a perfect world.
I didn't mind it. I really liked the texture of it.
All right, cool. Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately I'm going to, I don't know. I'm not going to like slap a grade on it or whatever. It's just going to be about head to head, how these dishes stack up with each other. But overall, I think like, this was a good showing. I was a little bit nervous towards the end. I was like, how's it going to come together? When I was seeing the oiliness, I was just like, is the sauce just going to completely fall apart? I feel like it held up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
brought a ton of flavor.
Overall, I think a good entry.
And just an enjoyable Friday night meal.
That's what I kept also trying to like put on the hat of like, what if I had just made this and I am eating it? So I'm judging it as somebody who made it, but it's not for a competition.
Right.
Yet a third hat. And with that hat on, I was like, I think it was good.
Absolutely.
Would I have notes? Yes, as we talked about, always. But
kind of when don't you? You know?
Right. So overall, I think a solid entry, a solid first night of the tournament.
Absolutely. Strong showing.
Excited to see.
Enjoyable for all.
Thank you.
I mean, yeah, the pressure's on for team.
Night 2.
Team hot Italian sausage, collard greens, garlic. Yellow onion, parsley, and
egg.
The
fans are, I think, really excited to see. They're really excited to see how the garlic, when garlic hits the field. I feel like garlic is like a star player. Like when a star player comes to town, and you're just like stoked. You're like, my team spent so much money for this. How are they going to perform? It's like a soccer thing. I feel like we don't really follow soccer, but like it feels like when it's just like, oh my God, Ronaldo, he's the only soccer guy that I know. Where it's just like even beyond the team, it's just like that's a star. I feel, but maybe that's just because I cooked an entire dish where I really wanted to have garlic, but I didn't have it.
I was gonna say last night at this time
like
you
Michael
were not
Jordan
that
Melvin
stoked
Jordan.
on garlic. You had 6 opportunities to pick it and you didn't.
I didn't
and
have
then
6
tonight,
opportunities. I had 2
it's
opportunities.
Seeming like an
you
absolute
took garlic
star
very
to you.
early.
Oh sure, yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, okay,
I think you took
enough.
garlic second.
Yeah, that
you
checks
took egg
out probably.
first.
Yeah.
Egg, garlic, I think was your.
Yeah, that sounds
order.
right. But regardless,
Right.
Last night I feel like there wasn't a whole lot of like, oh God, if only I could have the garlic. I'm going to be hurting for that garlic. I think only tonight, after having your cooking experience and feeling like you wanted the garlic or realizing that it was maybe in your recipes or whatever and you were without it, you have that perspective. But also, again, has to be said, I did not miss it. I didn't feel like, ooh, if there was garlic in this, it would be better.
Right. I got you, but I think that's the genius of garlic in many ways. Is sometimes you're not even knowing like this is garlic. You're like, this is good.
Well, I guess we'll find out tomorrow night, huh?
Won't we? Oh my God, folks, stay tuned.
God, I gotta figure out what to do with that fucking garlic.
Did I hype it up enough?
Well, now you've called out both my garlic and my hot Italian sausage as being the number 1 stars on the draft list, even though you didn't pick either of them and you had first pick. So we'll see what's going on here. There may be some overhyping.
Oh yeah, you think I'm trying to set expectations too high?
There's something going on. I don't know. We'll see.
I'm just a person who loves garlic and hot Italian sausage. That's all.
And I know that to be true independent of this competition, so I won't hold it against you.
I think basically I was excited about my ingredients as a team, and I was excited that I got them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But of the just singular ingredients, just straight up like, oh yeah, those are 2 that I'm excited to eat, frankly. I'm stoked for tomorrow. I just get to eat and trash talk.
I haven't been trash talking.
No, you haven't in the slightest. And I probably won't either.
I don't know. It's pretty in line with your disposition, I feel. Also, I feel like maybe this isn't true of everybody, but I feel like, at least in my experience, trash talk maybe doesn't translate great in audio format because so much of it for me feels like, facial.
Trash talk is mostly...
Well, it's setting a tone. It's a mood. It's it's a raised eyebrow.
Yeah. Are you thinking of shade?
No.
No, you're thinking of trash talk.
Yeah.
Interesting. Like, what is an example? Muhammad Ali, I guess, he had a lot of raised eyebrows.
I don't know. I think it's just a quality, a subtle undermining,
I don't know. I think we're both just, also, this is just a thing that we're, I don't know,
That stays in.
I think, like, we're both competitive, but I think we also both like a good, clean game.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. Neither one of us is, like, cheaters. We're not cheaters, and neither one of us would want to win if it wasn't fair,
Right. That said, I put the hot Italian sausage on the hood of my car at 1 p.m. today. If I couldn't have it, no one else will.
I think by this time tomorrow night, then it'll be beautifully browned by the absolutely sweltering heat outside.
Oh, miserable.
Slow cook, really gently rendering that sausage.
Again, I'm excited. I'm really excited for it. We'll see. Night 1 in the books. Night 2 coming up. Stay tuned. Thank you for joining me, fellow judge.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that is the first meal in the ingredient draft cook-off. I feel like I did what I needed to do, but was it too oily? Was the beef brown enough? Was it innovative enough? These are the things that will keep me up at night. Does it stack up to what Haley's going to do? What is she going to do with those eggs? All of that next week. I will tip my hand a little bit to say that Haley's, as always, got some tricks up her sleeve. But in the meantime, please rate and review and subscribe to the show wherever you do that for podcasts. It really helps. If you decide to cook along at home, please tag the show at Stay for Dinner on Twitter, at Stay for Dinner Pod on Instagram. I am at DC Pierson on Twitter and at DEECEE Pierson on Instagram. My interstitial music is by Advance Bass, the amazing Owen Ashworth. The intro song is July 4th, 2004 by Jason Anderson. The cover art is by Sarah Beacon. That's Becan. I wrote a couple of books, The Boy Who Couldn't Sleep and Never Had To, and Crap Kingdom. They are out there in any form, including audiobook and e-reader, that you can easily get right now, or order them from your local independent bookstore that is probably shipping books out right now. Please support independent booksellers whenever possible. And in the meantime, we will see you next week for the next meal in the ingredient draft cook-off. Have an awesome week. Bye-bye.